ਜਸ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਹੋਸਟ ਆਸ਼ਮਿਤਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਾਂਗੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਦਿਲ ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਇੱਕ ਮੈਂ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋਈ ਹਾਂ। ਜਿੱਥੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਪਿਛਲੇ 1.5 ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਤੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੇ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟਸ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਮਾਰਕ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ। ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਆਫ ਦ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਚੁਭਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਜੋ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ ਇੰਟੈਗ੍ਰਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਧੱਬਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਸਿਰਫ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰੀ ਦੀ ਬਟ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇਹ ਮਾਹੌਲ ਡਿਵੈਲਪ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋਇਆ, ਕੀ ਕਾਰਨਾਂ ਕਰਕੇ ਅੱਜ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰੀ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਮਾਰਕ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਨਸਾਈਟ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਬਟ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਰੰਟ ਕੰਟੈਕਸਟ ਦੇਣ ਲਈ ਜੋ ਰੀਸੈਂਟ ਕੁਝ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਡਿਵੈਲਪਿੰਗ ਹੈਡਲਾਈਨਸ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਭਾਵੇਂ ਲਖੀਮਪੁਰ ਖੇਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਆਸ਼ੀਸ਼ ਮਿਸ਼ਰਾ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇੱਕ ਤਰਫ ਨੈਰੇਟਿਵ ਡਿਵੈਲਪ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਇੱਕ ਉਹ ਬੇਟਾ ਤੇ ਦੂਜੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਆਰੀਅਨ ਖਾਨ ਇੱਕ ਉਹ ਬੇਟਾ ਜੋ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਦੇ ਜਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਸਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ। ਇਨ ਸਾਰੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰੀ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਰੋਲ ਬਣਦਾ ਹੈ, ਕੀ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦਾ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਇੰਪੈਕਟ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਇਨ ਸਾਰੀ ਸਟੋਰੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਉਹਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਸੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਅੱਜ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਦੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ। ਪਹਿਲੇ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਹੈ ਐਂਡ ਆਮ ਸੋ ਗਲੈਡ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਫਿਰ ਇਹ ਟਾਈਮ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ। ਜੁਆਇਨਿੰਗ ਅਸ ਫਰਮ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਇੰਡੀਆ, ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਮੀ ਇਨ ਵੈਲਕਮਿੰਗ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਸੰਜੇ ਕਪੂਰ। ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਸੰਜੇ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਵਾਗਤ। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
Sat Shri Akal ji.
So good to have you, Sanjay ji. You know, you are obviously General Secretary of the Editors Guild of India, which was founded in 1978. And, you know, last time jo tusi ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਸੀ, last time you were with us, I got to interview you in person in Delhi. You were gracious enough to invite us to your place and sit down for an interview. At the time, ਅਸੀਂ democracy ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ, ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੀ democratic identity ਦੀ, and Editors Guild of India ਸੰਸਥਾ ਨੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਸ ਆਈਡੈਂਟੀਟੀ ਨੂੰ as the fourth pillar of society, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਆਪਣਾ ਫਰਜ਼ ਨਿਭਾਇਆ since the late 70s, right? So before we talk about ਅੱਜ modern day ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰੀ ਤੇ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੰਨੀ ਲੋੜ ਪੈ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਐਂਡ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਕਮੀ ਵੀ ਪੈ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, let's talk a little bit about EGI, such an interesting and important institution. Sanjay ji, मैं चाहूँगी for our viewers' benefit, please walk us through the inception of this organization.
Thank you for inviting me, Ashmita. I wish I could speak Punjabi, although a lot of people think that I'm Punjabi, but I'm a UP wala, so don't know much about much Punjabi. So many Kapoor speak such fluent Punjabi, but not me. I hope to make up very soon. Thank you for having me and asking me all these questions. I would talk to you about Editors Guild, but when you start getting views on other issues, then they will be mine. And this is a disclaimer that I want to come up with, that much of what you talk about the contemporary issues are my views and not that of EGI, because EGI is a body of about 200 editors. I cannot speak for all of them, with varying views, with varying editorial lines, with all kinds of issues that people have, and they're very powerful, egoistical people, and they would not like me to speak on their behalf.
Absolutely.
So that is why the Editors Guild is very important. It has members, about 200 odd members, representing the entire geography of India. They are TV, they are online, they are print, they are radio, and practically all kinds of people. And these are not organizations which are members. These are individuals who are editors who are members. So in a certain way, they may go from job to job, but they are people who remain editors and they hold that position, and they're people with very strong views. So in a certain way, they bring in the strength that provides a certain kind of conscience for the entire media. We take up issues which have a bearing, which provide a direction to the entire media in the country. In the last 1 year that I've been the General Secretary, we've actually issued about 31 statements on various issues pertaining to harassment of journalists, where freedom of expression is being curbed, whether it is the issue of sedition, and even on the issue of the Pegasus, which is a intrusive software which has been brought in to probe, to hack, or to surveil various journalists. So we have been talking about it, much to the surprise of many people who think that India doesn't have freedom. So our presence and what we are able to say shows that we pretty much work in a very free environment, and we say pretty much what we want to do.
Sanjay ji, it's refreshing, and I think साडा सारियां दा हौसला वधांदी है. It's empowering to hear that the members of EGI and EGI as an organization is still carrying forward that torch, clinging to those principles of old school journalism. Last time we spoke, you explained to us the conditions which necessitated the formation of EGI, formed in 1978, right? I just want really briefly for you to tell us what were the circumstances that caused this organization to be put together, because I think there may be some parallels to be drawn here, if even to a lesser extent. So can you please remind us once again, what were those specific circumstances in the 70s that led to the creation of this org?
So the trigger for creating an entity like the Editors Guild was the internal emergency which was imposed by Indira Gandhi. And at that time, many of the editors felt that if there was a cohesive body which could put combined pressure on the government to, ensure that their freedom of expression, their freedom was preserved, maybe they would have had a better say, better chances of, preserving their freedom. But during emergency, what happened? This is a very famous quote, which was of L.K. Advani, the BJP leader and former president of the party, that when we asked the media to bend, they did not just bend, they crawled. And that has rankled the editors for many, many years. And they thought that if you have not a union kind of thing, but a loose arrangement where all of them take up issues that helps in preserving the media, the ideals that drive the media, then it's possible to somehow brave the circumstances which, threaten to take away our rights. So that is how it all moved forward. So you can, in a certain way, position it in circumstances wherever you think that life is becoming difficult for media. People think that some time back, many years ago, when Rajiv Gandhi was there, he tried to bring in some anti-defamation law, which was resented. In fact, many editors walked at Rajpath near the India Gate and protested, compelling Rajiv Gandhi to withdraw those laws which would have, curbed media freedom. And time and again, we have done that. So that's why there is a great amount of expectation that people have from Editors Guild that, look here, they will stand up, because it's not one individual. There are so many people from different parts of the country who all converge. And I think they are one on the issue of preserving their freedom. So they may be pro-BJP, anti-BJP, anti-Congress, pro-Congress, but on one issue, they are absolutely clear that their rights should be preserved under all circumstances. And that is what our strength is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sanjay, you mentioned that EGI has been incredibly active, and once again, it's great to hear that active in a way that is perhaps the very much needed counterbalance to this wave of Godi media, sentiment that we're seeing. This narrative of the media being essentially bought out or lapdog media for the ruling party. It's good to see that there is a force that is standing up against that in one way or another. So, I want to talk about some of these statements that you're talking about, right? These press statements specifically. There was one issued recently by EGI regarding the death of independent journalist, the young Ramin Kashyap, at the Lakhimpuri Kheri incident. So I want to talk a little bit more about that, and I want to talk about some other other stories that are brewing in India. Perhaps you can give us some context for those of us sitting abroad. We're going to stop for a quick break here. Sanjay Kapoor, please stay with us. Viewers, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜੁੜੇ ਰਹੋ, ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਾਰੀ ਰਹੇਗੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਇਸ ਪਾਰ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਤੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਅਕਸਰ ਗੱਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਰਹਿ ਵੀ ਗਿਆ ਜੋ ਇੰਡੀਪੈਂਡੈਂਟ ਤੇ ਆਬਜੈਕਟਿਵ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਪੋਰਟਿੰਗ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਆਊਟਲੈਟਸ ਦਾ ਸੁਣਨ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਯੈਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹਲੇ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ ਇੱਕ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨਲ ਇੱਕ ਐਥੀਕਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਰੋਲ ਨਿਭਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਬਟ ਅੱਜ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਕਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ members ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾ ਕੇ ਇੱਕ representative of a ਸੰਸਥਾ called the Editors Guild of India ਜੋ ਕਿ 200 ਲਗਭਗ 200 editors ਦੀ ਬਣੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਪਰਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੰਪੈਕਟ ਇਸ ਪੂਰੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਪਿਕਚਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਪਲੇ ਆਊਟ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਡੇਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇੰਨੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਉੱਠ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ। ਇਹਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹਨ ਫਰਮ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਸੰਜੇ Kapoor, General Secretary of the Editors Guild of India. Sanjay ji, ek baari fir tonu program de vich swagat karte hain. I'd like to reiterate for our viewers that of course even though you are the current General Secretary of EGI, this evening you are expressing views that are personal to you because once again this organization is a group of 200 independent editors that have very diverse views and surely you cannot speak for them all, but I'm glad that at least to see ਜੁੜ ਕੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਓਵਰਆਲ ਪਿਕਚਰ ਦੀ ਕਲੈਰਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਰਾਈਟ? ਸੋ ਵੀ ਅਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਯੂਰ ਟਾਈਮ ਹੇਅਰ। ਯੂ ਗੇਵ ਅਸ ਅ ਨਾਈਸ ਬੈਕਗਰਾਉਂਡ ਅਬਾਊਟ ਦਿਸ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਐਂਡ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇਹਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਹੋਈ ਬੈਕ ਇਨ 1978, ਕਿਉਂ ਇਸ ਸੰਸਥਾ ਨੂੰ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਿਆ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ perhaps it is needed more than ever. Sanjay ji, my purpose for inviting you to this program, we have been extensively covering the Lakhimpur Kheri violence that took place and the developing story over the last week regarding the Union Minister's son Ashish Mishra, who was driving one of the vehicles that plowed through a congregation of protesters that were peacefully marching, and there's video evidence to show all of these things. These are not just anyone's claims, mine or any other individuals. One of the individuals that was killed in this violence was a young independent journalist by the name of Raman Kashyap. So EGI recently issued a statement regarding his death. Can you tell us a little bit about what was in that statement and why it was important for EGI to issue it?
I think, I want to find out whether I'm speaking for myself or whether I'm speaking because you mentioned EGI, so I need to just confine myself to the statement. I think what is required is to bring to the fore the importance of a witness, and media in those small towns and villages is important, but it's slowly fading away. I mean, you look at the deceased person. He was earlier a teacher who lost his job because of pandemic, because there were so many job losses. Then he becomes a stringer at a very barely $10 a month, maybe less he was getting, and he steps out and he takes up, starts interviewing one of the farm leaders, and that is when he gets mowed down. And the manner in which the entire episode unfolded, I think, compelled the EGI to talk about it because there was no clear evidence as to how this has really happened. And we believe that if the camera of the journalist could have been retrieved, if there was some kind of forensic that would have gone into it, or maybe a sequence of event would have been put together. Subsequently, they did that. I mean, there were some more cameras, 5 or 6 of them, that helped to show that you had a car which motorcade which actually mowed down so many peaceful protesters going actually in a different direction altogether. So that was, I think, a reason why we wanted to really know whether he was actually killed. There was also a suggestion that he may have been shot. So that fact has been denied. So there was a certain confusion, and I thought an event like this, the media's role should be highlighted, what it was doing, what the person was doing. And that is the reason why we came out with a statement.
Ji. Sanjay ji, for the sake of clarity, this next question is to you on a personal capacity, right? Of course, EGI issued a statement as being a body representative of members of the media. It was almost necessary for the organization to do that. But in a personal capacity, as someone who consumes the news and you are responsible for a portion of the news, you are an editor yourself, how is the reporting largely around Raman Kashyap and Lakhimpur Kheri incident, to a greater extent? How was the reporting around it, in the national media versus some of the small to medium-sized outlets that you saw?
The reporting on the happenings in Lakhimpur Kheri have been evolving. I mean, in the early days when the incident took place, there was an attempt to control the narrative. There was surely, certain kind of managing that was taking place by people very close to the government. Or there was actually what happened, you had a minister's son who was involved, and not long back, the minister was seen to be threatening the farming community that if he is given freedom, he'd be ensured that within no time this entire agitation can be brought to naught. And so there was an obvious link. But having said that, when the incident took place, there was an attempt to manage it. And that really carried on some of the channels that are known to be very close, especially the ones which are based out of Delhi, Times Now, Republic, and few more. And they kept on harping that there was more to it. And it's actually... it was provoked by the farmers who started throwing stones, or they started, throwing brickbats at the car, things like that. There was an attempt at obfuscation. It was an attempt to, in a certain way, to change the direction of where the entire story was going. But I think because of the extensive use of social media, and then you had Priyanka Gandhi who also stepped in. There was a campaign of sorts where she put in a great amount of effort. And that is when I think the state government also stepped in. And the UP police was, I think, for quite a while, be very objective in terms of ferreting out information, whatever may be the dynamics that compel them to do it. But the local police contributed in taking out facts which would not have been known otherwise. We're talking with one of the drivers who said the person sitting next to him who was was the son of the minister, or things like that. So, because there was so much of media attention, social media, YouTubers, so many reporters, so many people with the little cameras going around, then TV channels, you had the print journalists, maybe hundreds of people. So in a certain way, there was an explosion of information which is coming in. And one thing that came it very, very clearly is that these people were mowed down. There was no provocation. They were people who just came, they did not even put on the horn of the car when they were blazing down this road, and they just killed these people. That was the intent. I mean, if you look at the videos, it's heartbreaking. You find old people being, tossed on the bonnet and people coming under the car. And one of the things that I have been mentioning is that the journalist who was killed subsequently, he's the one who got hit. He's a man, if you look at the images, he's the person who's wearing a brown shirt. And he got hit, and he gets entangled in the last vehicle which was coming. And that is what compelled the vehicle to stop. Because if that would not happen, then all the three cars would have raced away without being stopped. And that without even inadvertently on the part of the dead, that vehicle stopped. And that is how some of these people were killed or lynched. There were 4 people in the car who were also killed. So that is how it happened. So there is, I think, a certain uniformity in this report which is coming out now. And that happened because of this entire pressure which built at different levels. And I think government, despite their attempt to save a minister from the government, they have been forced to, stay quiet on that without building a counter narrative.
Sanjay, you paint a very interesting comparison here that I have to ask you about. On one hand, there is a lot of talk nowadays about the role that social media or independent journalists or just individuals with their phone out recording on their camera have to play in this, in this field of traditional media where you have old school outfits that are sending out their reporters with paraphernalia versus these small time individuals. But would you say, and once again in a personal capacity, would you say that perhaps the government or the authorities were compelled to move forward in this incident to press charges, to make arrests, because independent journalists and the explosion of information on social media kind of made it impossible to make the story go away?
I think it played a very major role. And then one thing that in a certain way compelled the government agencies to take charge and do something about is when the Supreme Court took a suo moto, decision to take it up, and they started asking tough questions. They asked the UP state government what they have done, and it looked deeply embarrassing for many of the police officers and bureaucrats that, they were seen to be protecting somebody who was so obviously involved. So that, in a way, changed it, and the pressure remained from the media and from political parties. I told you the Congress got in, then you had other parties also getting in. And I think the manner in which it had happened, that kind of shocked everyone. It was barbaric, the entire, the manner in which they went about, killing the opposition, people whom they did not like. Because for quite a while, the people who were in the car have been demonizing the farmers, calling them Khalistanis, anti-national, you name it, I mean, in a certain way. So there was no sense of remorse that this is what they are doing. But nobody knew that something like this would happen. I mean, this was, an act which was not, you seem act by people who didn't have a conscience, who didn't even bother about what were the implications. And it killed about 4 people. It could have killed 40 people, 50 people. I mean, it all depends upon how far they would have gone about it, although many people have got injured. But fundamentally, the pressure continued from the democratic section of our society, which was represented through media, through opposition parties, through civil society. Yes. And they kept on demanding from the court that, look, you need to intervene. And I think the court did the right thing by intervening and making the police act on it.
Absolutely, and I don't think anyone will disagree with you that even though it took a few days and a lot of pressure from a lot of different sectors of society, it is good to see a forward movement in this case towards justice. I have more questions about other developing stories that are taking place in the country right now and the role of media as a whole in regards to all of these stories. एक और छोटे जी ब्रेक ਲਈ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਰੁਕਣਾ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ। संजय कपूर जी इस तरह ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ बने ਰਹੋ व्यूअर्स ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜੁੜੇ ਰਹੋ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਸਟੋਰੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਉਸ ਪਾਰ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਜਰਨਲਿਜ਼ਮ ਦੀ ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ ਕੀ ਇੰਟੈਗ੍ਰਿਟੀ ਕੀ ਸਟੇਟਸ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਕੀ ਇੰਪੈਕਟ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਸੋਸਾਇਟੀ ਤੇ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਇਨ ਸਾਰੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਇਨਸਾਈਟ ਦੇਣ ਲਈ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਸੰਜੇ ਕਪੂਰ ਫਰਮ ਦਿੱਲੀ। ਸੰਜੇ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਵੀ ਅਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਯੂ ਜੁਆਇਨਿੰਗ ਅਸ and sharing some really important insight in terms of what the journalistic body as a whole in India is going through, the changes it is going through. On one hand, you have the outsized influence of government on media, and on the other hand you have the individual's outsized impact on society using things like their phone and the ability to disseminate information at lightning speed regardless of whether or not you have a major outlet backing you up or not. But I have to now change the conversation a little bit. Last week, when we first started reporting on this Lakhimpur Kheri incident, there was a very interesting article by the BBC that was put out that basically created these two competing narratives. It was titled something like "The Tale of Two Sons in India." On one hand, you have Ashish Mishra, the son of a minister who, allegedly is responsible for killing innocent protesters. And on the other hand, you have Aryan Khan, the son of, international superstar and certainly Bollywood, king, royalty in some regard, a 23-year-old son of Shah Rukh Khan, Aryan Khan, who was recently arrested in the middle of a party on a boat, alongside other celebrity, children and well-known names. Aryan Khan's treatment, we won't really go into the legal side of this versus what has taken place with Ashish Mishra. But I do want to ask you about the media role in all of this. Would you say that the media, to a larger extent, has sensationalized the entire story around Aryan Khan, making it bigger than what it actually is? Or do you feel that the story was big enough that it merited that kind of attention?
Ashmita, I think the Aryan Khan story is a big story, fundamentally because there are so many gaps in the entire story with something that's been put out. For instance, you said that he was arrested while he was in a cruise, which is not true. He was arrested much before he boarded the ship, and there was nothing that was found. I mean, these are facts which have come out in the media very openly, not disputed. In fact, even the agency that picked him up, the Narcotics Control Bureau, never said that there was any drug which was seized from him. So, a certain way you have investigation which is carrying on in the media, on TV. There is, I think, a certain amount of joy that you can sense in channels which are close to the government narrative or keep on repeating that. But having said that, there is also a certain disquiet which is visible in social media, which expresses pretty much what local people, ordinary people think, that somebody who seemingly is innocent, doesn't have any, who was arrested for not even carrying any contraband stuff. Why is he there? Why is he being arrested? So these are issues which are coming out from the media. I mean, you have social media and even in traditional media, like there are editorials which have been written about in newspapers about why he's been arrested. So, what I'm trying to say is that there is a certain kind of freedom which is there. It's not the government narrative which keeps on figuring everywhere. There are people who do it to try to manage the narrative. The government is very keen that a certain impression should go. But having said that, there are many people who don't agree and they write about it, they talk about it. Like I go on TV quite often on many channels. I say pretty much what I want, because I would not go otherwise if they don't allow me or don't give me the freedom to say what I want to, like I'm doing here. So there is a freedom that is excised. But having said that, media is in a serious crisis. There are about 10 million jobs in the last 2-3 years that have gone away from the media, people living out of media companies, odd jobs, production guys, writers, sub-editors, this, that, so many of them. And in most of the newsrooms, it's without any reporters. They have all gone away because reporting is seen to be subversive. People don't know how to deal with anything exclusive. So largely in the newspapers, in various publications, you only have agency reports which are coming. You may have, feature writing, which is, by and large, there's no new information coming in. So that is not entertained, not really preferred at the moment. So media is in a crisis. So what does these media companies do? From where do they get advertising? The only big advertiser is the government. Like, for instance, the UP government, which has elections coming up in February, March. We have a monk who's the chief minister, Mr. Yogi Adityanath. He has a reputation. But he's been presented as a man who's doing miracles in UP. The entire kind of quality governance that he's providing is changing the landscape of the city, of the state. he's the one who's advertising. It's more through advertisement that people think that he's doing a great job. But most of the newspapers and channels or even online publications dare not write anything against Mr. Yogi, because without his support, most of these outlets will, would not know how to deal with, how to find the next meal for their employees. So in a certain way, the entire media in India is cash-strapped. They don't have much to look forward to. They're only supported by the government, and they end up being the handmaiden of the government. They really end up doing pretty much what they are told, and we see the outcome. There are few who don't have to do it, who do crowdsourcing, like online publications. We got Wired, we got Scroll, and a few more, which are actually living because of the crowdfunding that they managed to do. But bulk of it is in a very, very bad shape.
Sanjay ji, I mean, I do want to discuss more in depth about this media crisis that is playing out, and then the subsequent result, where we see people generalizing it and just putting the label Godi media and all of it without understanding the intricacies of the crisis. But, would you say that part of this crisis, one of the unintended consequence, or perhaps it is intended, the side effects, and once again, this is totally at a personal level, the same way that the media is facing a crisis, would you say that Bollywood, to an extent, who are also reliant on public opinion and, being in the public eye and disseminating information, even if it's entertainment, it is still information to some extent, would you say that they are facing similar constraints, and that this whole situation with Shah Rukh Khan, some have said that he is, being made an example out of because he didn't follow along with a lot of these narratives to support the current government and to toe the government party's line on a host of issues, like a lot of other celebrities have?
Shah Rukh Khan kept quiet. I think this is something that is held against him, that there was so much of injustice which was heaped on from the minorities, and he should have actually taken a stand in 2014-15. He just kept mum. And many people are asking, especially his brethren, people who belong to his community, people who feel strongly about him. They said that he never stood up for us. Why should he do it? Did he do anything? And because I think what has happened, that the celebrities that you're talking about, the Bollywood stars, they have feet of clay. I mean, they may look like superstars on the screen, beat up 20 thugs, but when it comes to looking the government in the eye or doing anything, they don't do it. I mean, it's not like Hollywood, where you have stars taking on Mr. Trump and generally telling they could tell him in his face that what he's doing is wrong. It doesn't happen in India at all. I mean, there have been very few instances. A few film stars like Swara Bhaskar and Richa Chadda and a few more, these young ones. But they suffer because they end up losing business. They don't get roles. They don't get anything, because I don't think any financier or a production house wants to take somebody who gives an impression of being anti-government. So there is a downside which is visible for everybody, that look here, if you take a stand, you will suffer. And if you suffer, then you have to figure it out how far you want to go. And that is a dampener. But you expect people like Shah Rukh Khan, who goes beyond the borders of this country. He's a bigger soft power. He's the biggest soft power that we have. I mean, you go to any country, people are aware of him and the work that he's done. I've been to Germany and I saw the kind of fan following he's got. I've seen videos of him in other societies. Yeah. He's really very big. And the burden on him to take principled stand was there, but he didn't do anything. So that is it. And why Mr. Aryan Khan, his son, has got picked up, nobody has a clue. All kinds of conspiracy theories are going on. But we hope that the courts are going to intervene. They do, and they will sift the grains from the chaff and, allow whoever is guilty to pick up, and somebody who's innocent will be allowed to go walk out of it. So we are hoping that in the next few days it happens, but that is what the state of the Bollywood is. Nobody takes any stand. But in the media is far more difficult in the sense that there is less money, there are people who lose jobs. There's so many people who lost jobs, they'll never be journalists again. And I keep saying it every time I get an opportunity that, look here, it's a profession which has been derided, which has been ridiculed, been demonized. They call this profession Godi media. It's only 6 or 7 editors or the owners who are Godi media. But what about
what
the
about
reporters?
all
what
the
about
rest of
ordinary
those
people?
hardworking individuals?
I mean, they end up doing the mule's work, and they are the ones who get categorized with people who don't have integrity.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very difficult life. And
Sanjay ji, I mean, of course, it seems that the picture is very bleak, but we are all hopeful for a brighter future. And I want to talk to you about that, because I want to close out the program on a positive note with hopefully, something optimistic to look forward to, in the time ahead. We're going to stop for another quick little break over here. Sanjay Kapoor ji, is tarah naal bane raho. Viewers, tusi bhi ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਰਹੋ. Conversation ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜਾਰੀ ਰਹੇਗੀ. break ਤੋਂ ਇਸ ਪਾਰ. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ. ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹਾਂ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਸੰਜੇ ਕਪੂਰ, General Secretary of the Editors Guild of India. Sanjay ji, welcome back once again. Very, very, eye-opening conversation about the state of media. And from an outsider's perspective, it's very easy to point fingers and say that sari media is really India de vich bakau ho chuki hai, Godi media hai, without really understanding, that at the heart of the crisis there are a few bad players, but everybody gets that bad label as a result of it, and most people are just trying to make a living. They're just trying to do right by their profession and are in a bad situation. But I would like to think that even though the current state is a bleak one, a sad state, that there is hope for the future. I remember the conversation we were having last week before this interview about this, and you said, there are these independent outlets that are doing excellent work despite all of the danger, the threats that are levied against them because of that. And they might offer some source, some ray of hope, some light at the end of the tunnel, in this current situation. Can you tell us more about that? I mean, what can we be hopeful about in terms of the future of the media in India?
I think you raised a very valid point. What has happened in the last few years that you had traditional media with traditional sources of funding, you had the advertising coming in. But now you also have online publications, which are very large following. I mean, you probably have some of them which have millions of followers. And they are the ones who are putting in money. So when that money is coming in, it gives them the freedom to do it. And every time the government dislikes some of my friends who work for them or who own them, they say that the amount of money just comes as contribution spikes. So there is a desire in the people to get the other point of view, a point of view which may not be liked by the government, but they still want to know about it. So they may make their own choices when it comes to deciding what is right and what is wrong. They may agree with the government point of view, but they want both sides. And that is where I think we have a hope that if there's a desire for both sides to be entertained and people to know about it, we will always have an independent, free media which is not controlled by the government.
And what role do what kind of role do you think that the NRI, the diaspora abroad, can have in all of this? Because, with technology, with the internet, one positive side effect has been that anyone anywhere can access information. So, you have these publications, these outlets that, they may have a certain type of reception in India itself, but abroad, they may be the only outlet that folks sitting out here have to get an insider's view of what's going on, an objective picture of what's taking place. What role do you feel that the diaspora can play to enhance, to empower these kind of outlets, these publications?
It's a very, very difficult question to answer, because what has happened that there is a certain amount of xenophobia which is sweeping the country. So even which has got actually far more accentuated during the farm agitation, that every time you had the farmers coming in and support from the NRIs coming in, they would talk about the foreign hand, and they would say that they are the ones who are getting support from outside. You had Rihanna, and you had Greta Thunberg, and you had a number of young singers and others from the NRI community were supporting them. So in a certain way, the fight to preserve our freedom is our own, in the sense what we are doing back home. And that is where, I mean, you can get moral support from people who are outside. We always feel very nice when they step out and applaud what you are doing. But fundamentally, it is our own fight. It is something that we need to carry on, because we have realized that if something goes wrong, the NRIs have another world to live in. They can feel bad. I mean, they may have memories of the world that they are left behind. But eventually, they are not the ones who have to stand up to the state or to agencies. So that is how it is. I think what they can do is to create a corpus and to provide some kind of support to people who lose jobs or stuff like that. But it requires great amount of deliberation and thinking how they can help.
I mean, you know, I have to applaud you on that answer. It's very easy to say. Normally, when I ask that question, generally the response I get is yes, the NRIs and the diaspora should absolutely support. Khulle dil se support karna chahiye to initiatives such as this. But it's really refreshing to hear for a change that at the end of the day, the fight that you're talking about is being fought in India itself, and Indians have to stand up and fight for it, because for the rest of us sitting out here, it's very easy to get back to our new homes and our new lives that we've established, and you're 100% right in that. You know, Sanjay ji, I have a lot of questions for you, but unfortunately, sama sanu ithe zyada ijazat nahi denda. So I have to, in closing, just ask you one question. There is, especially for the Punjabi viewers that are watching this program today, all eyes are on the upcoming state elections, not just in Punjab next spring, but like you said, UP earlier in 2022. You know, what kind of foresight can you tell us about the reporting that will take place around these upcoming elections? What publications, you know, the big national media, we know how their reporting will most likely go, but everybody else, right? What should we expect in terms of the reporting around the upcoming state elections next year?
So allow me to use the word explosion again. There's been an explosion of YouTube videos about these young reporters going from village to village, talking to people, the villagers who, you know, maybe sitting at a dhaba, smoking a hookah, and telling their views about it. They are very illuminating. I mean, they provide an unfiltered view of what is happening. I've been watching many of them. Some of them are without names. Like, if you ask me which video you should watch, I don't say that which one. But they are providing you a snapshot of what is happening on the ground. I would not suggest any newspaper, because what has happened is that newspapers don't write anything now. They leave everything to the pollster, the agency which will provide how much percentage, who's going wherever. You can't trust many of these forecasting agencies, because they were souped up by whoever gives them money. And the data is also not their own. So I have my reservations. Others may have more faith in it, but I don't. So the only way you can figure it out is to see as much as possible variety of things, like I'm doing, because Google provides you an opportunity to dig deeper and look at the people, look at individuals who may not be known, and you hope that you get a point of view which is very different from that of the government. Because the attempt is to look at two sides, the government's point of view and the adversarial. And invariably, the adversarial point of view is not easy to get. So if you find it, read it, hear it, soak it up, and take your own decisions, then you get a fair idea. Otherwise, it'd be like very difficult to get certain who's winning, who's not winning. Last time, you know, I traveled in UP quite a bit, 2017, and it seemed as if it would be a close fight. And I got it all wrong, because BJP won about 40% of the votes, and they did so well. The vote percentage was far more than Congress and Samajwadi Party put together. And similarly, seemingly, this time you don't know where it will go, because I think this election again will be fought on national issues and not local issues or pandemic.
Absolutely. Well, all eyes will be on the reporting that comes out of the country regarding these upcoming state elections. Certainly something the diaspora is very, very interested in. Khas karke the Punjabi and the Sikh community that is watching with keen eyes to see what unfolds in northern India. Mr. Sanjay Kapoor, current General Secretary of the Editors Guild of India, thank you so much for taking the time and khul ke sad naal jis tarah tusi gal kiti, the unfiltered views you shared with us in your personal capacity. We really, really appreciate that. Do join us again, and in the meantime, stay safe, sir. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Sat Sri Akal.
Sat Sri Akal ji.
जी ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਸਿਰਫ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਚੀਜ਼ ਫਿਰ ਦੁਹਰਾਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਤੋਂ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਸਟੋਰੀਜ਼ ਡਿਵੈਲਪ ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ, ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਆਸਾਨ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਇਹ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਕਿ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਗੋਦੀ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਹੈ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਟੋਰੀਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸੁਣਨੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ। ਬਟ ਜੋ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੋਣ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਏ, ਯੂਪੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਏ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਪਦਾ ਓਪੀਨੀਅਨ ਬਣਾਓਗੇ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਪਾਓਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ। ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਗੋਦੀ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਨੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ, ਜੋ ਉਹ ਕੁਝ ਮੇਨ 4-5 ਆਊਟਲੇਟਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਪਾਸੇ ਰੱਖ ਕੇ ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ, ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ WhatsApp ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਤੋਂ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਪਾਓਗੇ, ਜਾਂ ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਓਪੀਨੀਅਨ ਫਾਰਮ ਕਰੋਗੇ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਅਖਬਾਰਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਹੋਏ, ਇੰਡੀਪੈਂਡੈਂਟ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ ਤੋਂ ਹੋਏ, ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਹੋਏ, ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਕੰਬੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੋਂ ਹੋਏ। ਐਟ ਦੀ ਐਂਡ ਆਫ ਦ ਡੇ ਜਿੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਾਓਗੇ ਉਨਾ ਹੀ ਸਟਰੋਂਗ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਓਪੀਨੀਅਨ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਇਨ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ, ਉਨਾ ਹੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਹੀ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਪ ਦੀ ਇਨਵੋਲਵਮੈਂਟ, ਆਪ ਦੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਪਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਇਨ ਮਸਲਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਦੇ ਕੋਈ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ, ਕਮੈਂਟਸ, ਕੰਸਰਨਸ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲਿਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ info@justbroadcasting.com, ashmita@justbroadcasting.com। ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।